The poet does not talk about what is going on in his mind, in his heart. He simply describes that on one side there is a sea, and on the left there is a bird. It is left to the sestet to make a comment, this time in the form of an explanation. The poet does not comment anything in the octave. He simply describes two sounds coming from two directions, trenching into his ears. But in the sestet, he speaks his heart. He describes what he feels when he looks at or hears these sounds. The sestet sees the two natural things, the sea and the skylark, as shaming the man-made town which lies behind him. At one side there is a sea, at the other side there is a bird, and behind him is the town, Ryle. And this town is the symbol of man's fall from a much better, more innocent prime. There is a biblical allusion here. As you know that human beings, the first human beings, Adam and Eve, were thrown out of paradise by God. So there is a heavy irony here as Hopkins picks up the theme of the ugliness of modern life and compares it to the uniqueness, to the beauty of nature. So most of the modern poets, contemplated on this aspect. Like Eliot, he talks about dirt and filth and pollution in the modern age at the beautiful places. So here also the poet Hopkins compares the ugliness of modern life to the ugliness, to the beauty, to the uniqueness of nature. However, to Hopkins, humanity's so-called progress is towards man's first slime. Actually, in the Victorian era, Darwin propounded the theory of evolution of man. Human beings are evolving, have been evolving through centuries. And even in Bible it is said that human beings are the crown of all the creation. But Hopkins says that we are not evolving. We are going back to our first slime and our superficiality. It is reversing down any so-called chain of evolution. So we are going back. We are not evolving. We are not going near God. We are becoming what we were in the beginning of the creation. I mean, first slime. Human beings were created by slime. So there is sudden loss of hope concerning the restorative potentials of humanity in this sestet. Hopkins expresses this opposition by the division into two parts using the octave for the description of the earth's beauty, earth's music, and the sestet, he uses the sestet to point out the deterioration of human beings, to point out the negative aspects caused by the so-called development, by the so-called industrialization, by science, by urbanization, by industrial revolution. These things have spoiled the beauty of nature, tarnished the image of nature, while the first part has a very positive character expressing joy and rapture and the beauty of nature, the beauty, the vastness of the ocean, and the melodious song of Skylark, a songbird. So the poet expresses joy and agility, but the second part, what is the second part of the poem? The sestet. In the second part, it appears dark and destructive. Very, the poet is gloomy in the second part because he begins to think about humanity and urbanization, industrial progress, which we prefer to call. But this is not progress according to Hopkins. This is deterioration. The first line of the poem clearly sets the context of the work, as the narrator introduces the idea that we are dealing with the effects of the two sounds, coming from two different directions, coming from two different sides, which are significantly too old to die, too old to end, giving a sense of pleasure to the poet, and the permanence, the immortality of nature. Both of the sounds coming from two sides represent the timelessness of nature, the permanence of nature, the immortality of nature, reverence. They deserve reverence. They deserve respect from humanity. So these, sounds are contrasted, are compared with the ugliness of the man-made cities, man-made towns, man-made civilization, which we are proud of. There is nothing to be proud of modern science, of modern cities, of urbanization, of industrialization, these things. So the town nearby for Hopkins is shallow and frail, illustrating the transitory and insignificant nature of our civilization, our progress, our development, so-called development. The poet mourns this thing, this industrialization, this development in the modern age. He mourns the loss of the beauty of nature. He mourns the loss of aesthetic sensibilities of human beings. Indeed, the sounds of nature literally shame mankind because of their purity, because of their innocence, because of their freshness. We have spoiled this beauty of nature by industrializing the towns, the cities. So these sounds literally shame mankind because of their purity, and this completely overpowers the sordid town nearby. This completely put the sordid town nearby to shame. They arguably, those two sounds arguably indicate Hopkins' desire to illustrate not only how shameful mankind is in relation to nature, but also how far it has fallen from its original position. God created human beings, very innocent, very beautiful creatures, as the crown of this earth. But we have turned ourselves into the first slime, the mud, you see. So we have fallen from the rightful position within the natural world. Because he says in the poem, we life's pride and cared for crown. God cared for us. He was concerned about our well-being, but we have killed God with the help of science. Where God created mankind as literally the crowning glory of his own world, the rulers over both animal and plant world, flora and flora. You know, human beings were the rulers of the flora and the fauna, and we ruled the planet. So this situation and this power is no longer available with the human beings. We have lost it by our stupidity.